You see, because you only told me to press stop.
Yeah, my fault.
After I did that, I
Okay.
stopped thinking.
Sorry, my
Okay.
fault.
Good morning. Sorry for the interruption online or the lack of communication. So whatever laws we have, they are all of a divine source. Some will understand more readily. Not to steal is probably something that most people, thank God, understand, but it doesn't mean that it's in a different categories. It's also God-given. For sure, the details, all the halachas, Jewish law revolving around any particular mitzvah is almost for sure never to be paralleled in any other religion, but the title, could be the same. Thank God for that other cultures should have laws that help society move along, but the legislation is not just for society, and the legislation is not just for the ritual, the spiritual connection of Hashem. It's one package, and that's ve'ela. This is connected. We're going to have a lot of civil law here, but everything's from Sinai. Everything is from Hashem. Then Rashi comes to Barbara's question. It says, Asher tasim lefnehem, that you should place before them. So Hashem said to Moshe, don't think, Moshe, lo tala adatcha, lo ma eshna lehem hapeg alach that or give to Amim. Don't think, Moshe, you could get off the hook easy. Don't think that you could teach the material 2 or 3 times and then say, it's not like I taught it only once. I taught it once and then I reviewed it, 2 times, so they can converse with it, a little bit. So I don't have to work too much harder. So Hashem says, Moshe, don't think that way, because you have to put it out like it's a table that's set. Kishulchan he'aruch, a set table, umuchan le'echol lifnei ha'adam. Everything's been prepared so that a person wants to eat, they can take. You're not going to put raw meat that if somebody wants to make it into a hamburger, you're not going to put that on the buffet. And vegetables that need to be cooked in order to enjoy them. You're not going to put those out. You're not going to put a raw potato out on the buffet. It has to be consumable. So the same thing is that you have to make sure that people can consume, that people can digest and to integrate into their lives. They have to have a very, very deep understanding of the Torah as much as any one individual can, and that will vary from person to person. That's why they have this big table, so some people could do more of the table, other people not as much of the table, but for everybody should always try to be delving in and growing. So that's how our Pasha starts, connected to Har Sinai, connected to every aspect of our lives. So now we're going to study a halacha, which most likely all of us have probably encountered the opportunity to observe that mitzvah. And that's in chapter 23, Kaf Gimel. Pasuk Daled 4. So it's on page 432, 433 in the English. Ki tifka shur oyevcha o chamoro. If you should encounter, I'm using that as a convenient translation right now. A convenient translation. But we're gonna talk more specifically perhaps about it. But if you should encounter the ox of your enemy, o chamoro, or his donkey, to'eh, that they're straying away from where they belong, hashev teshivenu lo, that you shall surely return it to him. Surely, the word to returning is written twice. Hashev tishivenu. So that's always an emphasis, and as is true in several other sources, the oral teaching will be, even if it's 100 times, you have to do it. The animal was running away, and you caught up with it, and you brought it back, and then in the afternoon when you're coming home, you see the same animal going back. You're not off the hook because you did it one time, as long as you have the physical ability to go ahead and move forward. So what's the name of this mitzvah?
Well, it's not Aveda, actually.
Well, okay. Asherat Aveda in nice Hebrew, or Shabbos Aveda in Ashkenazi.
It's not Aveda.
What's the definition of Aveda?
Actually, it is cinema.
Doesn't matter if it's a pen, that drops by and has, my name on it, so it has a siman, so just, or if it's an animal, anything that's lost. We'll see. Hopefully, before we leave today, we'll just see how broad this definition really could be.
But it's also mercy to animals.
Well,
the animal will get lost, will just wander someplace and wouldn't know where to go.
Right. Okay. So it may. I guess it depends how much food is available in nature for it versus the owner feeding, and probably at this time, I don't know about the water supply, but certainly the grazing, counting on nature to provide the grazing land usually. So did I see a hand up?
It's your enemies. That's the shirish.
Okay, so we have to understand what an enemy really means here, and an enemy means one or two things here. It's not the way we use it in English, truthfully. The enemy means either that say I, as a single person, witness another guy that I know from shul and everything committing an avera, a transgression.
It's not an enemy.
And he would become some type of enemy because he revolted against God. He's an enemy of God by transgressing.
Oh, your enemy, not enemy of God.
My role on the earth is, these are my words. I'm not quoting any source on it, but since we know that if there were two witnesses, because most items require two witnesses to establish them. In Jewish law, kashrus does not, other what we call isurim. But in terms of something that a beis din might give the person lashes, like if he was warned not to go ahead and continue to do this event, and he does it anyway, so he would be subjected to a fine, to a punishment. So how severe would depend what the transgression actually was, but that can only happen if there were two witnesses. One witness by themselves is not adequate. So I witnessed something that in the reality of life on this world, I can't do anything about. I couldn't give him my advice, but I can't give it over to the authorities that would normally handle such a thing because there was no second witness. It was only I'm a single witness. So I'm aware that somebody committed a transgression. So there's something. There's something about that relationship that that distance that person a little bit from me, until he does tshuva. Let's say Reuven, Reuven and Shimon is one person has was able to resist him, but the other person is not able to resist it at that moment. So that's one of the opinions of it's a pretty prime opinion, but that's one of the opinions of what this enemy means. It doesn't mean, and we'll have a deeper appreciation of this, I think, as we get deeper into the study. But it doesn't mean it's not the traditional enemy who's going to draw his sword and chop off my head. God forbid. If I come too close to it. Another definition of enemy is someone who speaks in a very derogatory manner to somebody, but you know that he's never going to physically hurt you. But so that's now that that's not to in any way to think that verbal abuse is not abuse, but it's just like so it's a category here. That's somebody who is unfortunately too free with his tongue and says disparaging things, hurts me, but I know that he'll never physically harm me. So, yeah.
Okay. So you are walking with your animal, and then you see an ox walking over there. Now you don't know that it's your enemy's ox. It's just an ox that is wandering. I mean, why does it have to be your enemy? You don't know that it's your enemy. The idea is that it's not a lost item. You see a show wandering, you should go and inquire whom does it belong to. I don't know how to inquire. But why does it have to be
great question?
Enemy?
I'm gonna answer that question by having us turn to the fifth book of the Torah, Devarim. So Devarim at chapter 22, the beginning of chapter 22, Kaf Bet, which is 800. I'm sorry. Hunter Bamidbar. Thank you. What page, Harold?
Well, chapter 20, what was it?
1.
It's probably 10, 48.
Okay. So. Okay. So here we're going to read. Look carefully. Read along. Let your eyes read along with me. Lo tir'eh et shur achicha o et seyo nidachim. You shall not see the ox of your brother or his sheep prancing away. V'hitalamta mehem, and close your eyes to them. Hashev tishivein la'achicha. That you shall surely return them to your brother. So let me just ask you a question first. On a scale of 1 to 5, and you can all answer with just raising, the fingers that correspond. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest and the closest connection from what we just learned back in this week's parsha, how close would you say that this pasuk is to the pasuk we were just learning before? 1 to 5. Give me on your hand a 1 to 5. But 5 is the closest. There's a big similarity. Wow! I got what a range! I'm happy to see that the one husband and wife voted together. I'm not sure how I didn't. Oh, okay. There are 4 possibilities here for that. Okay. So those of you who think that it's only a 1 or 2 degree of similarity, what separates these two sources?
That it's not your enemy, it's not your father.
Okay, good. Hold on. What else? Okay, brother instead of enemy. Okay.
Well, surely if you know it's your brother, you'll return it to him. I mean, what kind of question?
But brother doesn't mean brother.
It doesn't say on the.
Brother would mean a Jew. Brother would mean a Jew. Karen.
Someone who's not
The animals that are, the ox is still the same, but the second animal.
Okay, good. We'll see what we can do with that. Yeah, I can do something with that eventually.
It says, you're going to close your eyes. Here it doesn't even suggest.
Right, good.
It says right away for sheep.
Good.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I don't, it doesn't sit right with me. Required is after it. If he doesn't knock on your door and say, have you seen my ox? You don't have to give back.
No, it's because you don't know who he is. Sometimes most of the time we find something, we don't know who the owner is. That's why we put a sign up, make an announcement.
Does it say anywhere? I mean, I
Especially,
missed it. They're just supposed to inquire.
Yeah, it says yes. Pasuk, the second pasuk. Ve'im lo karov achicha elecha v'lo yidato. And if your brother, again, it's not your familial brother. If your brother is not close to you, like you find, the name is there, but he lives in Australia, and you're not going to Australia, so you'd have to wait for somebody you know who's going to Australia, or for the guy in Australia to somehow come to you, or arrange a UPS pickup or something like that. So he's not close to you. And then it says, Vilo Yidato. How do you translate that, those who are willing to take a guess? Vilo Yidato?
You're not familiar with him, you don't know.
Well, if you don't know, so how would you know he's not close if you don't know who he is? Because this is a big, yeah, Karen.
Well, you're not acquainted with him. In other words, okay, so let's say the animal has a tag around its neck and gives you the address, and you know he lives in Australia, but you never heard of him, you don't know who he is, you're not acquainted with him. Or he lives in the next town and you're not acquainted with him.
Okay, but it's also very possible that, okay, maybe a guy put a shin on the cow's body, to be a sign, but he doesn't know what the shin stands for. So it has a sign, but you don't know who he is. But the vav at times means or.
But why does he mention him as Africha?
We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so it means that either case, either you know who the person is, but you're not able to make that trip to get the lost item, whatever it is, to the owner, or you don't know who it is. So then, you have to take it into your house, whether it's your house, your garage, someplace safe, and you have to keep it until somebody shows up and can prove that they're the owner. Now, if it's an animal or something that's perishable or damageable over time, so since it says, does it say here? Yeah, it says v'hashevotolo, that you have to, that then you return it to him. So you have to protect that item so that you actually can return it to him. So if it was like a basket of fruit that had a certain name or other signs on it, that's nice. But if you're going to keep it for 4 weeks, it might be you have nothing to return to the person. Then you have to sell the basket of fruit, while it's still good condition, and hold the money to give to the person, because you're responsible for the integrity of the item we find.
Let's say you found somebody's dog and there's no tag whatsoever. Don't I have a sense of responsibility that I have to put up signs around the neighborhood or the like to say, has anybody lost a dog?
So generally, yes. So the question, would be let's say, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I can give you another interesting question without not necessarily have an answer for it. We'll see, but let's just let's say that you live in a place where the law is strictly enforced and only service animals are allowed, and you don't have a letter that you need a service animal. And so the building director wants you to get that dog out right away. You can't keep it, so you could find something else. So it depends, like where you go. Like if you go to a pound, that if they don't find the owner or someone to adopt the animal within X number of weeks, whatever the guidelines are, they're going to euthanize the animal. And that could be a problem because you found somebody's property. So maybe you have to find somebody who has a backyard, who likes dogs, who needs a service dog, has a letter for service dog. So, but it becomes our obligation. Now, why does it say? So I'm gonna open out this question up to the group. What is Achicha telling us? Why not just leave it blank? Why put in some kind of person? Just say if you find an animal, why does it use the word Achicha? Bob.
Well, it puts in an aspect of, this is somebody you care for, just like
And who,
whether you know him or not, it's for some reason this type of person, whether it's part of your community or something. It's like there's caring,
okay, good. So I mean, very specifically, this is a mitzvah that one's obligated to do to another Jew. As in real life, finders keepers, losers weepers. That's the way it works often. Well, maybe not so. It depends upon ordinances. I should say, but that's how people practice. But in truth, I think many municipalities have the rule that if you find something, you have to hand it into the police. And Nechama Leibowitz, I remember, she said that she had a discussion with, I think it was a professor of law, who said, like in the United States, if you see a wallet in the street, you are not obligated to pick it up. But if you pick it up and you don't know the person, then you have to give it into the police. But you're not obligated to start the process that will get that lost item back. Whereas according to the Torah, if I'm in a Jewish neighborhood, then I have an obligation to try to find the owner of that lost. I have an obligation to pick it up. I can't be mit alem. I can't make believe that I didn't see it. So that's what the pasuk says. You see, many people might want to just forget about it, especially if you have to go chase down an animal. But you're not. If you can do something about it, you're obligated to do it. So that's why achicha. That is what it's teaching. That's a special obligation that we have for one another, and that's why if you live in a Jewish area, you have the obligation. If you live in an area which is not predominantly Jewish, or certainly if the street is not predominantly Jewish, as you could do it, if you find something on a street that is predominantly Jewish, then I think that would qualify as the area. So, but if it happens, if you're visiting this far-flung community, and you're like one of 3 Jews that are in the city on that day. And the other 20,000 people are not Jewish, so you don't have that obligation. Now you have an opportunity to be Mekadesh Shem Hashem, to sanctify Hashem's name by returning it. So that's a different consideration. But from the strict point of view of lost and found, that is really a Jewish obligation one to another.
So maybe when it says Oyevcha, your enemy, it's even if it's your enemy, because you already know that you have to return it.
But
anyway,
a Jewish enemy.
What?
A Jewish enemy.
A Jewish enemy?
Right. Either the person, yeah.
No, it doesn't say Oyevcha, it doesn't say Jewish enemy.
That's what it is. A Jewish enemy, but he either has offended you because he speaks unkindly to you whenever you see him, or you saw him sin.
When you see a donkey or an ox, you don't know who's belongs to.
Well, if you're living in a Jewish neighborhood, you know. If you're in a state,
you don't know everybody's enemy.
Harold.
Recognizing that the psukim have differences, might one try to infer about achicha from Oyevcha? In other words, if you're supposed to return something to somebody who's not your brother, or however you want to translate that, then Kalmachomer, you should do it for your brother.
Yes, so that's an observation you're making.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to put this on hold for a second, so I want to ask a question. So here we have in this week's Pasha, which is in Sefer Shemot, the second book of the Torah, the Torah uses the word, Oyevcha, your enemy, that if you encounter the ox of your enemy. And near the end of the Torah, it says your brother. Why that order? Why didn't we flip it? Why don't we mention Achicha first? And now, and in Devarim, get up to the enemy. Why start off talking about the enemy?
Why even mention your brother unless it's a repetition?
It's Kalvachon.
Yeah. So I think that had Achicha been mentioned, I'll try to work out to justify having both. I have to think about it. It's a great question. But I'll start with the fact, since they do both exist in the Torah, and so I'll start with the question of just the order. So in the order, I would think that if the Torah said first your brother,
No, first Oyevcha.
if it said first your brother, that would be like too obvious that your brother means someone that, you know, even if you don't know them so well, you know that they're an honest person, they're a polite person, you know, they try to do mitzvahs, you know, with sincerity. So, you know, maybe that would bias us that, oh, you know, for someone like that who's in a nice category, you know, yeah, of course we're going to do it. And then maybe that would bias us that we have to wait all the way to Sefer Devarim to hear the fact that, even if it's someone who you don't really like, even if it's because he doesn't like you or he's not treating you nicely, or he didn't do something right halachically. So, you know, and it would be intentionally, you know, transgressing something that he would know about. But maybe if the order was the other way around, you know, maybe it would be harder for me to, you know, to help even that person who has some kind of deficit about him or herself. Now, why do we need to say it at all? The reason that we need to say it is to teach us that it's a mitzvah between Jew and Jew.
Okay, let's finish.
I thought the
Yeah, he is a Jew, but Oyev would be harder to teach us that this is a mitzvah that has a special level of obligation between Jews.
We only had the Mishpatim pasuk. We only had the Mishpatim pasuk as it's written about Oivecha. Then why do we even need the Dvarim?
Because it's not so obvious. Achicha is very black and white. For Oivecha, you need the Torah Sheba'al Peh. You need the oral law to teach. Otherwise, we know that in our language, Oyev usually means someone who is really our enemy and is either seeking our physical, our financial collapse or our physical demise. You know, it's a real enemy. So you would need Torah Sheba'al Peh to, you know, an oral tradition to tell us, no, it's a Jew who, for some reason, is a little bit more estranged from, you know, from what's happening. So, but I give you, you know, that's what Shabbos, that's where we have the class on Thursday. So over Shabbos, you can work it out, you know, and please share some of your conclusions with me. I think I told you, I mean, in the shul, I've told the story at least one time. I'll tell you very briefly. My mechutin in Australia told me that he heard the story from Haifa. And it's from a while back. You know, Haifa has a pretty nice religious community these days. It wasn't, you know, as abundantly populated by religious Jews as it is now, I understand. But there's this couple, and not youngsters, that had only one child, a daughter. And that daughter, at the time of this story starts, was somewhere in India in an ashram, you know, with her guru. It's this, you know. And many times, particularly the father, both parents obviously were very pained by this. Many times the father, when they would have a phone call, they had exchange some letters, and she wasn't totally estranged from her family, just the mindset was like, you know, so ruptured, you know, between them. But the father many times asked her, to reconsider this and that, and she never wanted to hear anything about it. And then one day in the shul that the parents would go to, they were going to have a scholar in residence, and there was somebody who was a professional, a very successful professional in bringing back Jews who went to other religions or cults, to bring them back to Judaism. So the father, and it was like a few weeks ahead, the father said, if only my daughter could be here. And he gets in touch with his daughter and says, you know, I would like so much for you to come and hear this talk. And she says, no, really, I don't want to go through this. I don't want it. He says, listen, if you could agree just, you know, to come for, you know, a week or so and hear this talk, I promise you, I'll never bring the topic up again. You'll make your decisions. I won't bring the topic up again. And the daughter said, if you're really serious about that not you and not mom, you're not going to bring up the topic, I'll come, you know, for the lecture. So she comes in, and up Salachis, Thursday night, they get at Ma'ariv, they announce the scholar in residence is ill, and he's not coming to Shabbos. The parents' heart, you know, just like, you know, fell down. Shabbos morning, they're getting ready to go to shul, and the daughter's getting ready to go to shul. So the father says to her, "Where you going?" "I'm going to shul." And he says, "But the speaker's not here." "Listen, I told you, and I told you I was going to." She's like, she's like, had the need that whatever she said. She said, "I'd come to shul with you and hear this, so I'm going to come to shul." I said, "I'm going to come to shul." So they didn't really give sermons even in the shul. When the rabbi would speak, when it would come time for learning, the rabbi would open up Mishnayos, and they would learn Mishnayos for 15 minutes. So that's what the rabbi did. And they were learning Elam Mitzias. They were learning about the Mitzvah and the chapter on lost articles, finding lost articles. And the rabbi was a little monotone in how he was saying. So the father's sitting there like plotting that I thought I'm going to have this great scholar in residence, and the rabbi's only reading through the Mishnayos, and it's not so exciting. So he's feeling really bad. And Sunday night, Monday morning, whatever it was, the daughter, it's time for the daughter to go, and she goes back. She goes back to India. She's walking into the ashram, and in front of her is her guru. And her guru bends down and picks up a wallet that's on somebody dropped the wallet, picks up the wallet, and there's cash in it. He takes cash, he puts it in, I don't know if they have pockets or not, but he takes the cash and he throws the wallet in a garbage pan. And this girl runs up to him because she heard the rabbi talking about, you find something has, like a wallet is generally a siman, even if it doesn't have a name in it. Somebody could tell you the color of the wallet. It was ripped in this pocket. It had 2 credit cards in it. You could identify a wallet. So she goes up and says to him, "I noticed that you picked up a wallet there. Aren't you going to try to find the owner?" And he essentially says, "Finders keepers, losers reapers." And she went back home to Haifa. She left the ashram because of the Mishnah on what you do with the lost articles and when you find them. Okay.
I saw that too, so pick up
Maybe she did that before she left, but she went into the garbage can and took the wallet. Maybe.
pick it up.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't remember that part of the story. But so if we look at if we look at these 2 psukim, the one from this week's Pasha and the one from Devarim in Kitetse, there are other differences. What else do we have? In this week's Pasha, it says lo tifga, that you shouldn't encounter. And in the Devarim, it says lo tir'eh, you shall not see and close your eyes. It means like if you see, then you have to return it. You have to get it, and either bring it back to its in fenced clothes. That's my question.
The Indian is the same.
The Indian.
It's still the same.
So why the guy just wanted to try out what that word looks like? Why use a different word?
Why? Just using another word.
So
doesn't mean it's different.
right. So like the Malbim, for example, I'm pretty sure it's the Malbim says, we have tifga, we have tifgash. Like tifgash means that you're right near each other, right here. Tifga means that we're close enough to have a conversation, but we're not right up. But here, the implication of tir'eh, I could see a lot further than I can hear, which my wife tells me all the time. So the language of seeing something includes an animal that's farther away than this week's animal is. And that's not the only difference in language. We only associate, besides for the difference in animal. The Ramban, by the way, makes note that what's different between an ox, a sheep, and a donkey?
is kosher, one is not.
Two are kosher, and one is not, exactly. So, it's like it applies to, the Jewish guy owns it, so it's his animal. He's relying on that animal also, maybe. So it doesn't matter different, don't look for an excuse. Oh, it's a trait, animal. I'm not going to go after it. It doesn't matter. But the other difference is that in Hebrew, you can tell me if it's like that in English, but in Hebrew, the first word in this week's Pasha is to'eh. And the one in the Devarim is nidachim, which has two differences actually. The first difference is that it's a different word. There's a different shoresh root and everything. It's not like it's a singular word. It's also in the plural, whereas in this week it's in the singular. So the nidachim is much farther away than the to'eh. And it seems like there could be even more than one animal.
Nidachim is also abandoned. It's not that tifgah, that you met him or you see him. You see him, that is just.
Right, okay, so abandoned, so we don't, but probably the animal is not really abandoned, but in a way it's like so far away that it doesn't have an obvious connection to where it really
Otherwise,
belongs.
Right.
Right.
It's like nidachat.
Right. Well, nidachim, we refer to people in Golus who are away from Israel as that the nidachim.
Well, that's
So-
not the same.
So you
consider yourself here as nidachim?
that's the way we're supposed to think.
Well, not exactly.
Let me find an Israeli.
Well, I know it.
As long as you can
So
get-
our real home is supposed to be Israel. That's our real home. So the Ramban comments though is that an animal that's just straying, from its path, he could be a few blocks away from his home, a few blocks away, and so it's in the Rambam's language, you can get him back on the derech below amal gadol without a lot of work. It's not so hard to get him back to where he has to be, but here the animals that's farther away, and really they're separating, is in a sense, with the picking up just on the sense that Ada was talking about, that they're still running, they're still running away, maybe even. So it's a lot more work, and they're farther away. That they're more work here. It might be it's sure or set. The sheep is sometimes harder to take care of. We think that they're nicer, they're cuddly, but sometimes you might have to pick the sheep up and carry them over something. An ox, a donkey, they're sturdier and hardy animals, so may not be as much work. And in the laws of someone who steals something, if someone steals a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, and then they're caught, so they have to pay 4 times the value of the sheep. Whereas if they did the same thing with a cow or an ox, they pay 5 times the value. So and the famous teaching from Chazal is that with the sheep, very often the guy has to carry him. So even the sheep to get away, the ox, you could run away and have it, follow, be pulled with his leash, and it's a little bit less work. By the way, what Rav Shimshon Hirsch talks about in general, forget about whether it's 4 or it's 5, but in any other item that someone would steal, he'd have to, if he still has the item or it's intact, he'd have to give the item back and give a financial payment equal to the value of that same article. So Rav Shimshon Hirsch asked, well, why is it that the sheep and the ox are in a different category? So he answers, and this will maybe help us understand this whole setting here, is that the sheep and the ox are animals that graze. Now, especially today, not that it can't happen, but today, people have electronic fences and surveillance equipment. But you can imagine, especially going back earlier in society, that the safety of anybody's flock was in part relying on neighbors or passerbys to be responsible also. That they didn't have as much control over their flock. And so that Reb Shimshon Her says that basically someone would say who stole a sheep because there is no surveillance tower and the shepherd is not looking, the animals are just grazing here and they know, most of the animals are going to go back home. They know where to go to sleep. And like the animal that we're talking about, that's an abnormality that they went to a place that's not really their home. But Reb Shimshon points out that everybody else in society has a role in helping to protect somebody else's property, which, by the way, is also part of the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. Hashavas Aveda is also not to allow something, like if you see something that's about to get lost, you see that something's about to roll off a table and it's going to smash and you could stop it, so you have to prevent the loss from taking place. You see an animal that's starting to, knock the gate open, so you have to intervene right away so that it doesn't become a lost animal. So you don't have to go, chase after it. So Reb Shimshon Her says that basically the person who stole that sheep or that ox or that cow violated a contract of society.
You're not talking about stealing him.
No, but I brought it in to understand more about the right. I brought it in. This is part of our contract with society. It's related. It's not the same mitzvah. You're right, but I use it to show why sometimes it's harder to get. Like you think, sheep are very cuddly. They're pretty to look at and everything. They're not so dangerous. An ox could be dangerous. A donkey could even be dangerous. So, you think that, maybe it's easy to take care of them, but it could be a lot more work at times to bring a sheep back to where it belongs than it is to bring an ox back. That's how we got into the comparison. But by doing that, but this is still shares something, is that this is part of our social contract that Hashem expects of us to help protect the property of other people. Okay, I'll let you, any if you have questions for Harold and Barbara?
No, just tell the story about our daughter in Australia.
I almost did that, but okay, first let's have Harold's questions.
Sorry, just noting another difference, the Dvarim pasuk has the Salam Tameham, which the Shmos pasuk doesn't have.
Right.
And I would think maybe, if anything, you would want it in the Shmos pasuk because you're talking about Vayivachah. Why would we think that someone would sort of ignore or hide himself?
So good questions. I think I might only be able to give you a partial answer right now, but that word is the shorish of the Hitalat and Devarim appears twice in the paragraph, and we didn't read everything in Devarim is a longer dealing with the issue than it is in this week's Parsha. But there it says that you should not see the ox of your brother or his sheep fleeing, and you close your eyes to them. You're not allowed to close your eyes. It's hashet tishum. You should have to return it. That if lo karov, what we did there, if you found it, but you don't know how, it's too far for you to get to where the owner is, or you don't know who the owner is, then you have to take it into your house. And we did that for so you keep it, take care of it in the proper way until the person comes to get it, or you have to sell it and protect the assets. And then it says, you should do the same thing for his donkey, the same thing for his clothing, and any type of aveda, any article that gets lost, separated from your brother, that shall be lost from him, who which the Gemara learns means lost from him, but not lost from everybody. So if something gets washed away in a flood, and then somebody happens to find it down the road, you don't have to return that because we assumed it was Yegish when someone saw the flood, crashing through and taking up all property. So it's not something that really is going to be returned at all. The odds are against the odds. You find it, it's already been yerush, the ownership's been taken off it. That's what you learn from Asher Tavad Mimenu, that it's lost for him, but it's not lost from anybody else. So you could find it and return it to him. Lo tuchal hitalem. You're not allowed to close your eyes. You can't turn around from that opportunity. So he repeats it twice. The truth is that the second time, the end of the paragraph, lo tuchal hitalem, is that's easy Hebrew to understand. That's a good way. You are not allowed to close your eyes or to turn a blind eye to it. But at the beginning it says, you shall not see the ox of your brother or his sheep fleeing, and you shall close your eyes. You should ignore them. You know, it's if you look quickly, you could just look at that phrase. Oh, for some reason, see, I'm allowed to turn my head and to ignore them because it says You have to go back to the first word in the pasuk. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 words earlier is the low. So why does it separate? So we learn from that halakhically that there are certain times that you can actually decline the mitzvah. So if you're not able to walk, you have a tremendous back injury. Okay, so what can you do? You're going to run after sheep or donkey. So you're not obligated, or it's not something that it's really beneath your dignity. Let's say you dropped a pen, and again, okay, this is pen costs $1, let's say, and because we have a lot of these pens, let's say I put my name on it, so it has a siman, okay. But if this pen fell into a big puddle of water outside that's muddy, I'm not going to retrieve it. So there are certain, if I wouldn't do that, for my pen, I don't have to do it for it. I mean, if it's a gold pen, I would do it, but for this, I'm not going to do it. So there are times that you can decline the mitzvah. So that's why it's introduced. Why it's weighted the Torah weighted here. I'll try to think about it. I don't know.
That's not right because
I'm listening, and then we give Barbara a minute.
Because it says, if you do close your eye, it doesn't mean that you are allowed to.
No, it says here. Look,
If you do,
but
I ignore them. That doesn't mean you're allowed to.
But Chazal teach, and it's part of our Torah Shabbat Peh, Chazal teach, and why did Hashem specifically arrange it? You have to read so many words until you can put together the prohibition with the action, and at the end, especially where everything's all together. Why? Because to teach that sometimes you're not obligated to do it.
Why?
I mean, if you would want to, let's say, something has to be worth a shava pruta, it has to be worth at least a little bit. If you walked along and in this muddy water you saw a baby's pacifier.
Well, we're not
I want to know. Are you going to pick it up?
That's ridiculous.
What? Why? Why?
Because it doesn't make sense. You're not going to say.
But you only have a right to say that because the low and the hit mimeno is separated. Barbara, what about Australia and sheep?
Our daughter lived in an area that was farmland. Really, it's like a house with a lot of property.
Not her permanent residence.
And she went there to isolate with COVID. And so they had some sheep there. And so, when the sheep gave birth, so starts having more sheep. And every once in a while, either one of her kids or the sheep themselves somehow pushed the gate and they would walk down the road. And it used to be like a farm road, but now it's really more residential because these farms like here, they're built up. So she was always worried, if she's going to be able to get the sheep back. Somehow they were able to turn the sheep back. But when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, not such an easy job to take 8 sheep and try to get them back to the property, when they're safe.
Well, then they have to watch them. Somebody has to watch them. They shouldn't watch them.
Okay, 12 o'clock on the button.
Thank you.
Have a good day and have a beautiful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi Yasgur.
Thank you to our online participants.
That's your wife,
I
right?
don't-
That's
yes,
Barbara.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did I miss any questions from a participant? No. Okay. Have a good day.